The courtroom was silent, so silent you could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Until the judge's gavel slammed down like thunder. And in that single, earth-shattering moment, Jasmine's entire world crumbled. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but trust me, the whispers that leaked from that courtroom painted a picture more shocking than any Love and Hip Hop episode you've ever seen. Fans are calling it the most savage legal takedown in reality TV history. One witness even claimed they saw Jasmine's hands tremble as Kirk's lawyer pulled out a stack of evidence so thick it looked like it could crush a car. The tension, off the charts. The energy, electric. You could feel every glare, every smirk, every ounce of revenge that had been brewing for years, finally boiling over. Kirk didn't just win, he destroyed, and when that final ruling was read, the gasp from the crowd was so loud, people 3 blocks away swore they heard it. But what could possibly be in those secret documents that left Jasmine speechless and fans screaming game over? Stick around, because the twists in this story will have your jaw on the floor and your heart pounding like never before. The air outside the Fulton County Courthouse was thick with tension that morning. The kind of electric buzz you feel before a storm rips the sky apart. Fans, bloggers, and paparazzi swarmed the steps like bees to honey, their lenses ready to capture history in the making. Jasmine arrived first, stepping out of a sleek black SUV in a tailored white suit that screamed confidence. But her eyes told a different story. There was a flicker of unease there, a hesitation that even her practiced smile couldn't hide. She walked briskly, ignoring the shouted questions. Jasmine, is it true you forged the contract? Jasmine, did you really try to take Kirk's assets? Her heels clicking against the concrete like a countdown to something catastrophic. Minutes later, Kirk Frost stepped out of his own car, flanked by his legal dream team. The man looked unbothered, almost smug, his crisp navy suit fitting, like armor. And right beside him, Rashida, dressed in all black, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She stood like a silent force of nature. Her presence sending a clear message. This wasn't just Kirk's fight, it was theirs. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was even more suffocating. The gallery was packed to the brim with friends, family, and a handful of reality TV co-stars who had taken the day off filming just to watch the carnage unfold. Whispers floated through the air like smoke, some in support of Jasmine, others murmuring that this was the day she'd finally get what she deserved. The judge entered, stern-faced, and everyone rose. This is the matter of Frost versus Washington. The bailiff's voice boomed, and just like that, the gloves came off. Kirk's attorney wasted no time, launching into a blistering opening statement that had the courtroom hanging on every word. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, turning to the judge, what we have here is a calculated attempt to defraud my client. Miss Washington has engaged in a pattern of deceit, manipulation, and outright theft, all under the guise of a personal relationship. Jasmine's attorney tried to object, but the damage was already done. The words hung heavy in the air, and all eyes darted between the 2 former lovers, watching for any sign of reaction. Kirk sat tall, eyes locked on Jasmine, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. Jasmine, for her part, kept her gaze on the table in front of her, though her knuckles had turned white from gripping her pen too tightly. The first witness was called a former business associate who, to everyone's shock, turned out to be one of Jasmine's closest friends. I didn't want to be here, the witness said, voice shaking, but I can't lie anymore. Jasmine told me she was going to bleed Kirk dry. She said this was her way of getting back at him for choosing Rashida over her. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, a couple of muffled laughs. The judge had to bang his gavel 3 times to restore order. Jasmine's head snapped toward the witness stand, eyes wide with fury. That's a lie, she shouted, before her attorney yanked her back down into her seat. But the blows just kept coming. Kirk's lawyer unveiled emails, real, printed, time-stamped emails in which Jasmine allegedly discussed diverting funds from a joint business account into a separate undisclosed account under her cousin's name. Each page that was passed to the judge seemed to chip away at her composure. Your Honor, Kirk's attorney said, this is not a misunderstanding. This is a deliberate, premeditated act to steal from my client. Jasmine's attorney tried to spin it, painting her as a woman wronged, a single mother struggling to navigate the fallout of a failed relationship. Yes, mistakes were made, he conceded, but these were the actions of someone desperate, not deceitful. She was hurt, she was abandoned. And now she's being vilified for trying to survive. It was a compelling performance for a moment. Some in the gallery seemed to soften toward her, but then came the bombshell. A video recording. Kirk's attorney pressed play, and the sound of Jasmine's own voice filled the room. "He thinks he's smart," she said on the grainy recording, "but I'll make him regret ever playing me. I'm getting every dime I can before I'm done." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Jasmine's lawyer seemed momentarily stunned. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her earlier confidence evaporating like steam. Rashida leaned over to Kirk, whispering something that made the corners of his mouth twitch upward in a faint, satisfied smile. Then came the cross-examination, a verbal boxing match where Jasmine tried to defend herself, dodging direct answers, accusing Kirk of being a manipulator himself. "You want to talk about manipulation?" she snapped. "At one point, ask him how many lies he's told in the last 5 years." But the judge wasn't here to dissect personal grudges. This was about evidence, and the evidence wasn't leaning in her favor. As the day dragged on, the strain began to show. Jasmine's hair, perfectly styled in the morning, now fell loosely around her face. Her makeup, once flawless, seemed to melt under the hot courtroom lights. She glanced back toward the gallery more than once, as if searching for a friendly face, but found none. Even a few of her supposed allies avoided her gaze. By mid-afternoon, Kirk's attorney brought out the final piece of evidence for the day, a signed affidavit from a financial analyst detailing the exact amount allegedly siphoned from Kirk's accounts. The number was staggering, even for reality TV royalty. Gasps rippled through the room again. Jasmine's lips trembled, but she quickly bit down, forcing her expression into one of defiance. "This is a setup," she muttered under her breath, but it was loud enough for those around her to hear. As court adjourned for the day, the tension didn't fade, it followed everyone out into the humid Georgia air. Kirk and Rashida exited together, their steps slow and deliberate, as cameras flashed wildly. Jasmine left moments later, head down, flanked by her attorney, ignoring the barrage of questions from reporters. And yet, even in that moment, no one could have predicted the twists that were still to come when court reconvened the next morning. When the second day of the trial began, the courthouse felt different, heavier, almost suffocating. Word of yesterday's bombshell evidence had spread like wildfire overnight, igniting every gossip blog, entertainment site, and Instagram account with a hint of drama. Fans camped outside the courthouse hours before proceedings, some waving signs reading justice for Kirk, while others defiantly shouted, "Stay strong, Jasmine." The air was thick with divided loyalties, and the media frenzy was at full throttle. Inside, the courtroom brimmed with even more spectators than the day before, everyone desperate to witness what many were calling the reality TV trial of the decade. Jasmine walked in first, wearing a dark green dress that clung to her like armor. Her expression was stony, but the slight tremor in her hands betrayed her inner turmoil. She didn't glance at Kirk, not even once, instead heading straight for her seat, clutching a small notebook like it held the answers to everything. Moments later, Kirk entered with Rashida once again at his side. This time, there was no mistaking the aura of quiet victory that surrounded him. Shoulders squared, chin lifted, a subtle confidence in every step. He nodded briefly to his attorney before taking his seat, his eyes locking on Jasmine for the first time in the morning, an unspoken challenge passing between them. The judge wasted no time, calling the court to order. "We will now proceed with additional evidence from the plaintiff," the bailiff announced, and immediately the tension in the room surged. Kirk's attorney approached the bench with a slim, silver laptop. "Your Honor, what you are about to see will make the defendant's intent clearer than ever before," he said, voice steady but dripping with implication. He turned he screamed toward the court, pressing play on a video file. The footage was security camera footage from a small office time-stamped just weeks before Kirk filed the lawsuit. In it, Jasmine could be seen rifling through a desk drawer, pulling out folders, and snapping photos of documents with her phone. The clip ended abruptly, but the implication was clear. "Miss Washington," the attorney said, turning toward her, "would you care to explain why you were in Mr. Frost's private office, handling confidential documents, outside of business hours?" Jasmine straightened in her chair, her voice, calm but her eyes, betraying her irritation. "That's my office too," she retorted. "I had every right to be there, and those documents, they were mine." The lawyer smirked faintly. "Your name isn't on them. Mr. Frost is. Shall we have the forensic analyst testify about the fingerprints found on those files?" Gasps echoed through the gallery, and Jasmine's attorney shot up with an objection, claiming the evidence was circumstantial. The judge allowed the analyst to testify anyway. And soon the courtroom was hanging on every detail, the dates, the fingerprints, the metadata from Jasmine's phone. As the testimony unfolded, Jasmine's facade began to crack. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms tightly, her jaw clenching with each damaging revelation. Then came another witness, a mutual acquaintance of Kirk and Jasmine who claimed to have been approached by Jasmine with a very specific proposition. She asked me, the witness said carefully, if I knew how to set up a business overseas so money could be transferred without a paper trail. The courtroom erupted again, the judge's gavel pounding like a drum to quiet the chaos. Jasmine's lawyer tore into the witness during cross-examination, painting them as unreliable and motivated by loyalty to Kirk. But the damage had been done. Even those who had walked into the room that morning on Jasmine's side were now shifting uncomfortably, their doubt growing with every word. By midday, the tension had turned almost unbearable. During a recess, Jasmine slipped out into the hallway, cornered instantly by a swarm of reporters. "This is a witch hunt," she declared, her voice sharp. "Kirk's just mad because he couldn't control me. This isn't about money, it's about revenge." Her words spread across social media within minutes, hashtags exploding as fans debated who was telling the truth. Back inside, Kirk sat with Rashida, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. At one point, Rashida's hand brushed his end. She whispered something that made him chuckle softly, a sound so out of place in the charged atmosphere that several people turned to look. When the court reconvened, Jasmine's team tried to claw back control of the narrative. They brought up old messages from Kirk, trying to paint him as manipulative, controlling, and hypocritical. "You want to talk about deception?" Jasmine's attorney pressed. "Let's talk about how my client was promised a business partnership that never materialized. Let's talk about broken commitments, emotional abuse, and betrayal." For a moment, it worked. Jasmine's voice trembled as she recounted late nights, unanswered calls, and what she claimed were Kirk's empty promises. Tears welled in her eyes, and some in the gallery visibly softened toward her again. But Kirk's lawyer was ready. In one swift move, he presented a signed document proving Jasmine had been offered a legitimate partnership, one she declined in favor of demanding a larger, unauthorized payout. The judge's expression hardened, and Jasmine's tears dried almost instantly. As the day's session neared its end, Kirk's lawyer hinted at even more explosive revelations to come the next morning. The gallery buzzed with anticipation. Outside, the crowd had only grown, with TV crews setting up for live coverage, sensing that the climax of this drama was near. Jasmine left quickly, ducking into her car without a word, while Kirk lingered on the courthouse steps just long enough for the cameras to catch his subtle, victorious smile. Little did Jasmine know, the worst was still waiting for her, and when the next day came, the courtroom would explode with the twist no one saw coming. The third day of the trial started with an almost eerie calm, the kind that makes you feel like something monumental is about to happen. Outside the courthouse, the crowd was bigger than ever, spilling out onto the sidewalks. News vans lined up like soldiers, and drone cameras hovering overhead to capture every possible angle of this public implosion. Inside, the air was thick, not just with tension, but with the curiosity of 100 pairs of eyes waiting for the rumored final blow Kirk's attorney had teased the day before. Jasmine arrived first again, but this time there was no sharp walk, no calculated smile. She moved slowly, wearing an oversized black blazer, as though she wanted to disappear into it. Her makeup was minimal, and her hair pulled back, giving the impression that the fight had already worn her down. Still, she avoided Kirk's gaze, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Kirk arrived moments later, Rashida by his side, as always. If Jasmine looked defeated, Kirk looked like the embodiment of confidence. He exchanged polite greetings with the bailiff, even cracked a small joke that earned a chuckle from the clerk, a deliberate display that he was in control. Once everyone was seated, the judge nodded toward Kirk's attorney. "You may proceed." The lawyer rose slowly, a theatrical pause that only amplified the suspense. "Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to submit into evidence a series of communications that tie together every thread of this case. These messages," he said, holding up a thick folder, "show a pattern of calculated manipulation designed to extract financial gain under false pretenses." He walked over to the clerk, handed over the documents, and then turned to the big screen at the front of the courtroom. With a single click, text messages began to appear, not just between Jasmine and Kirk, but between Jasmine and several third parties. In them, Jasmine referred to Kirk as a walking ATM and detailed plans to pull the plug once I get my payout. The room erupted into whispers, and Jasmine's attorney immediately objected, claiming the messages were out of context and possibly fabricated. But the blow landed hard. Kirk's lawyer, unfazed, brought out the digital forensic expert who had authenticated every message. The expert explained metadata, timestamps, and even traced the messages back to Jasmine's verified device. Every technical term was another nail in her legal coffin. Jasmine sat frozen, her jaw tight, but her eyes darted quickly toward her attorney, a silent, almost panicked exchange. The judge leaned forward, his tone colder now. "Miss Washington, you will have the opportunity to respond. But I will remind you that this court deals in facts, not insinuations." Then came the twist no one expected. Kirk's lawyer called a surprise witness, Jasmine's own cousin. The one whose name was allegedly on that secret bank account. A collective gasp filled the room as the young woman took the stand. She looked nervous, clutching the edge of the witness box, but her voice was steady. "I didn't want to get involved," she began, "but I can't keep lying for her." She went on to detail how Jasmine had convinced her to open the account overseas, promising it was just a tax shelter for a side project. But then the transfers began, large sums, coming directly from Kirk's business accounts. When I asked her about it, the cousin said, glancing briefly at Jasmine, "She told me to mind my business and enjoy the money she sent me for helping." The gallery was stunned. Even some of Jasmine's most vocal supporters looked down at their hands, unable to meet her eyes. Jasmine, for her part, shook her head violently, whispering she's lying under her breath. But her cousin's testimony was calm, detailed, and backed by bank records that Kirk's team quickly entered into evidence. At that point, Jasmine's attorney tried to pivot, claiming this was a civil matter being blown into a personal vendetta. "We are here because of a failed relationship," he argued, "not because my client is a criminal mastermind." But the judge didn't look convinced. As if to seal the day's damage, Kirk's lawyer played one last audio clip. This time from a voice note Jasmine had sent a friend. Her voice was unmistakable, low and dripping with disdain. "Once this is over, I'm walking away with enough to start fresh somewhere far away. Kirk won't even see it coming." The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of the overhead lights. Jasmine's eyes flashed, but she stayed silent, as if speaking would only make things worse. The judge announced a recess, and as people filed out, the press swarmed the hallway. Outside, the narrative had already shifted. Headlines were popping up in real time. Jasmine's cousin flips on her in court. Leaked messages show Jasmine's alleged master plan. Kirk emerged from the courtroom with the same calm demeanor, Rashida's hand on his arm, while Jasmine slipped out a side door, shielded by her lawyer. But the truth was unavoidable now. When court resumed the next morning, the only thing left to determine would be just how much Jasmine was about to lose. The final day of the trial felt less like a legal proceeding and more like the season finale of a hit reality TV show, except this time, there were no scripted lines, no retakes, and no safety net for Jasmine. By sunrise, a crowd had already gathered outside the courthouse, spilling into the street, chanting and waving homemade signs. Some were fiercely Team Kirk, others still clung to defending Jasmine, but most were just there to witness the climax of a drama that had gripped Atlanta and the internet for days. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. The seats were filled with a mix of press, reality TV personalities, and friends turned frenemies from the Frost's inner circle. Even security seemed more alert, as if they expected today's verdict to unleash chaos. Jasmine entered first, but she was barely recognizable from the woman who had arrived on day one. The sharp wardrobe choices and confident strides were gone. Today she wore a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back in a low bun, no jewelry except for a pair of small earrings. She looked pale, exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. But still, there was a spark of defiance in her eyes, a silent dare to anyone who thought she'd roll over and accept defeat. Kirk and Rashida followed shortly after, both dressed sharply in coordinated black outfits, a silent power move. Rashida's face was unreadable, but there was something in her posture that screamed satisfaction. Kirk, for his part, looked relaxed, almost serene, as though the outcome was already set in stone. The judge called the court to order, and Kirk's attorney wasted no time in delivering his closing arguments. His voice was steady, deliberate, and every sentence landed like a hammer. Your Honor, over the past 3 days we have presented overwhelming evidence, digital messages, financial records, sworn testimony, all pointing to one undeniable truth. Miss Washington, knowingly and repeatedly engaged in deception for personal gain. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not an accident. This was a calculated scheme. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. And while the emotional history between my client and the defendant may color the narrative, it does not change the facts. This court has the power to right this wrong, to protect my client's livelihood, and to ensure that such acts are not rewarded. When it was Jasmine's attorney's turn, he tried to fight back with passion, appealing to the court's sympathy. My client is not the villain she's been painted to be. She is a woman who loved, who trusted, and who made mistakes in the heat of heartbreak. This case is not about financial devastation, it's about humiliation. Mr. Frost wants to see her broken, not just beaten in court. Jasmine nodded along, tears gathering in her eyes. But the emotional weight in the room had shifted. The damage from the evidence was too deep, the impression too strong. Then the judge cleared his throat, signaling the moment everyone had been waiting for. After reviewing all evidence presented and testimony heard, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Kirk Frost. The words hit like a gunshot. Gasps and murmurs swept through the gallery. Rashida's hand shot up to cover her mouth, not in surprise, but in restrained triumph, and Kirk let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. The judge continued, Miss Washington is ordered to repay the sum of $327,000 to Mr. Frost, in addition to covering his legal fees. Jasmine's head dropped, her shoulders curling inward as though the weight of the number physically crushed her. But it wasn't over. Furthermore, the judge added, the defendant is prohibited from making any public statements defaming the plaintiff or discussing the confidential matters of their former business arrangements. Violation of this order will result in further legal action. The reaction outside the courthouse was instant chaos. Reporters shouted questions as Kirk and Rashida emerged, hand in hand, moving slowly down the steps as cameras flashed wildly. Kirk, how does it feel to win? One shouted. Justice, Kirk said simply, flashing the smallest of smiles before climbing into a waiting SUV. Moments later, Jasmine exited through a side door, flanked by her attorney, ignoring the barrage of questions. Her eyes were red but dry now, her face set in a mask of resolve, the look of someone who had lost a war but refused to let the world see her break. By afternoon, the headlines were everywhere. Kirk Frost crushes Jasmine in court. Reality TV's most explosive legal battle ends in Frost victory. Jasmine ordered to pay hundreds of thousands. Social media lit up, with fans dissecting every second of the trial footage that had leaked, debating whether justice had been served or if this was just another chapter in a toxic saga. But behind all the noise, one thing was undeniable. The verdict had left Jasmine with nothing but the clothes on her back, a mountain of debt, and a reputation in tatters. And as for Kirk and Rashida, they walked away not just with legal vindication, but with the unspoken satisfaction of having won the final, brutal round of a fight that had been years in the making. In the court of public opinion, though, the battle over their legacies was only just beginning. In the hours and days following the verdict, the fallout was unlike anything Atlanta's entertainment scene had seen in years. The courthouse drama may have been over, but the story was far from finished. It had spilled into the streets, the blogs, and every corner of social media. Within minutes of the judgment, hashtags like #KirkWins and #JusticeForFrost were trending nationwide, while #PrayForJasmine emerged from the last remnants of her loyal fanbase. Every gossip site had a different spin, some calling Kirk a cold, calculated victor, others painting Jasmine as a tragic figure brought down by her own ambition. Paparazzi staked out Jasmine's apartment complex the very next morning, catching her slipping out to her car in a hoodie and oversized sunglasses, moving quickly as though trying to outrun the camera flashes. When one reporter shouted, "Do you have anything to say to Kirk?" she paused just long enough to mutter, "This isn't over," before driving away. The clip went viral instantly. Meanwhile, Kirk and Rashida capitalized on their moment. Just 48 hours after the verdict, they were spotted at a high-profile industry party. Dressed to perfection and looking every bit the victorious power couple, cameras captured them laughing with other celebrities, posing for pictures, and even sharing a quick kiss that sent the crowd roaring. For their supporters, it was the ultimate victory lap. But the deeper drama was playing out in the shadows. Several of Jasmine's business deals, partnerships, she'd been cultivating quietly for months, began to collapse as word of the trials spread through the industry. One potential investor pulled out entirely, citing concerns about ongoing legal exposure. And a boutique she'd been set to collaborate with posted a vague Instagram story about protecting our brand values. Even some of her friends began to distance themselves, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire of public opinion. Yet, in the privacy of a small downtown bar one night, Jasmine met with two close allies, both former reality TV, and vowed she would rebuild. "They think they've buried me," she said, her voice low but fierce. "But all they've done is plant a seed." She spoke of a tell-all book, of an unfiltered interview that would set the record straight, and expose what she claimed were Kirk's own dirty secrets that never made it to court. "The truth," she insisted, is messier than they want you to believe." Across town, Kirk was playing his own post-trial game with precision. His legal team was already working on securing liens against Jasmine's remaining assets to ensure repayment of the judgment. Rashida, meanwhile, hinted in an Instagram Live that they were considering a special episode of their reality show to address the trial. "But only on our terms. We're not here to gloat," Rashida told her viewers, smiling slightly, "but people deserve to know what really happened." Fans flooded the comments, begging for the episode, promising record ratings. Behind the scenes, producers were reportedly salivating at the idea. Then came the shocker. An anonymous source leaked what they claimed was a series of private voice memos from Jasmine to a well-known blogger. In them, Jasmine allegedly detailed her plan to play the victim, publicly while quietly finding new ways to hit Kirk where it hurts. The blogger released snippets, and the internet exploded all over again. Jasmine dismissed them as fake and manipulated, but the damage to her already fragile public image was immediate. Brands unfollowed her. Collaborations went silent. The whispers in the industry grew louder. Whispers that maybe, just maybe, she'd never fully recover. Still, for every door that closed, Jasmine seemed to force another one open. A week after the verdict, she was spotted filming in New York, reportedly for a new streaming reality series centered on second chances. If it's true, it could be her path to redemption, or a public implosion waiting to happen. As for Kirk and Rashida, they remained firmly in the public eye, carefully curating their image as a couple who had weathered betrayal and come out stronger. They attended charity galas, posted polished family photos, and used the trial's end as proof of their resilience. But among their inner circle, rumors persisted that Kirk wasn't done, that there was still one more legal move in his back pocket, something that could end any future attempts by Jasmine to claw her way back. Whether he'd use it was the lingering question. And that's the thing, even with the verdict delivered and the court case closed, the story felt unfinished. Because in the world of reality TV and celebrity drama, endings are rarely permanent. All it takes is one leaked text, one viral video, one ill-timed public appearance, and the whole thing could explode again. For now, Kirk held the crown. Jasmine had lost everything. But in this game, power never stays in one person's hands. For long months had passed since the gavel fell, but the aftershocks of Kirk Frost versus Jasmine Washington still rippled through Atlanta's entertainment scene like tremors from an earthquake that just wouldn't end. On the surface, Kirk and Rashida's lives seemed picture-perfect. The couple posted sleek vacation photos from Turks and Caicos, attended red carpet premieres, and even hinted at a new business venture together. To fans, they looked untouchable. But behind closed doors, whispers suggested the victory had come with its own set of complications. Industry insiders claimed Kirk had grown more guarded, more calculating, always one step ahead in case Jasmine made her next move. And Jasmine, she had disappeared from the Atlanta scene entirely. No club appearances. No public events. Even her once buzzing Instagram had gone dark until one night, out of nowhere, she posted a cryptic black and white photo of herself with the caption, "You can't keep me down forever." Within hours, blogs were ablaze with theories. Was she teasing a comeback? Planning a revenge tell-all? Or was this just an empty bluff meant to stir the pot? The truth was far messier than anyone guessed. While the public assumed she was hiding away in shame, Jasmine had been quietly meeting with a controversial Hollywood producer known for turning scandal into ratings gold. Rumors swirled that they were developing a docuseries, one that wouldn't just focus on Jasmine's life post-trial, but that promised to reveal never-before-heard details about her time with Kirk. if the whispers were true, it wouldn't just reignite the feud, it could torch every bridge between them for good. Kirk caught wind of this almost immediately. A trusted friend in LA called him late one night. "Bro, I think she's about to pull something big. Bigger than the trial. She's talking to people." Kirk didn't panic, but his expression turned cold, his jaw tightening as he listened. "She wants a war," he muttered. "Fine, let's make sure she's got nothing to fight with." From that moment, Kirk's legal team went into overdrive, scouring through every clause of the court order to find a way to shut down whatever Jasmine was plotting before it could see the light of day. He knew that once her story was out there, true or not, public opinion could shift in ways he couldn't control. Meanwhile, Jasmine was building her narrative carefully. She reached out to old friends, former castmates, even ex-associates of Kirk's, offering them incentives to speak on camera. Some refused, unwilling to cross Kirk after his legal win. Others, however, were eager to finally air their grievances. "You have no idea what really went down," one former friend said in a leaked production clip. "People only know the half of it." The leak, though small, sent Kirk's camp into full alert. Rashida was livid when she saw it. "She's not just coming for you, she's coming for us," she told Kirk during a tense conversation in their kitchen. "She's going to drag my name into this mess, too." Kirk stayed calm, sipping his coffee. "Then we don't just defend. We attack." And attack they did. Over the next 2 weeks, a series of unflattering stories about Jasmine began popping up on gossip blogs. Anonymous sources claimed she owed money to multiple ex-business partners, that she'd been evicted from her apartment in New York, that she'd been seen in screaming matches with the very producer she was supposedly working with. Jasmine called the reports fabricated lies, but the damage was already spreading. What made things worse for her was a sudden, unexpected betrayal. One of her closest allies, the same person who'd been helping her arrange interviews for the docuseries, turned over hours of recorded conversations to Kirk's attorneys. In them, Jasmine allegedly admitted she was willing to embellish certain details of her story if it meant making Kirk squirm. That was all Kirk needed. His lawyers fired off a cease and desist letter, so aggressive that even the brazen Hollywood producer paused production. Jasmine, though furious, knew she was cornered. Still, she wasn't ready to quit. She booked a last-minute flight back to Atlanta, determined to confront Kirk face-to-face, not in court this time, but in private. When they finally met, it wasn't in some flashy restaurant or high-profile spot. It was in the dimly lit back room of a neutral friend's lounge. The moment she walked in, Kirk didn't even stand. He just looked at her and said, "You've got 5 minutes? You think you won because of that judge?" Jasmine snapped, her voice trembling with restrained rage. "All you did was buy yourself time. People are going to hear my side, one way or another." Kirk leaned back, unfazed. "And do you think anyone's going to believe you after everything that's come out? After you've been caught lying? The game's over. Jasmine, you lost. Accept it." But Jasmine didn't flinch. "You forget," she said quietly. "I know things you never want public. I've kept my mouth shut out of respect before. But that's gone now." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the tension so thick the air felt heavy. Finally, Kirk stood, sliding his phone into his pocket. "Do what you gotta do," he said as he walked past her. "Just remember, I always hit back harder." And with that, he was gone, leaving Jasmine in the dim light, her mind racing. This wasn't just about the trial anymore. It was personal. It was war. And war, in their world, never ended cleanly. The war between Kirk and Jasmine had moved beyond the glare of the courthouse spotlights, morphing into a shadowy game of moves and counter-moves, each one riskier, dirtier, and more personal than the last. Jasmine's return to Atlanta hadn't been quiet for long. 2 days after her tense meeting with Kirk, she was spotted at a trendy Buckhead restaurant, surrounded by a table of high-energy friends, sipping champagne like she had just signed a $1 million deal. Bloggers swarmed the photos, speculating that she was sending a clear message: "I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere." But behind that carefully staged confidence, Jasmine's situation was more fragile than ever. Her finances were dwindling, her reputation was battered, and her alliances were thinner than she wanted anyone to know. Meanwhile, Kirk wasn't celebrating his court win anymore. He was strategizing. The leaked voice memos, the almost launched docuseries, and Jasmine's brazen threats had convinced him that this chapter wouldn't close until one of them was completely out of the picture. He began meeting privately with some of the city's most influential media consultants, people whose job it was to shape narratives and control public perception. The plan was simple: keep Jasmine on the defensive, force her to react instead of act, and let the public lose interest in her entirely. But Jasmine wasn't sitting idle either. One evening, she showed up uninvited at a VIP after-party for a local music awards show, an event Kirk and Rashida were also attending. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Guests whispered as the two locked eyes across the room. Rashida's smile faltered for just a second before she turned to whisper something in Kirk's ear. Jasmine didn't approach them right away. She worked the room, greeting producers, shaking hands with artists, laughing loudly in a way, shaking his head. "You're still playing checkers while I'm playing chess." The standoff was short-lived, but it was enough to reignite the gossip mill. The next morning, grainy videos of the encounter hit Instagram, with captions like, "She's fearless," and "Kirk and Rashida look pressed." Public opinion began to fracture again. For every fan praising Kirk's legal win, another was applauding Jasmine for refusing to back down. Then came the twist nobody saw coming. An anonymous tip landed in the inbox of one of Atlanta's most notorious gossip bloggers, not about Jasmine, but about Kirk. The tip claimed Kirk had been involved in a shady business deal years earlier that, if exposed, could be damaging, both legally and publicly. The blogger, always eager for clicks, teased the story without dropping details, posting, "Got something huge on a certain reality TV husband. Y'all not ready?" The timing was suspicious, and everyone assumed Jasmine was behind it. She denied it outright in a rare phone interview with a tabloid, saying, "I don't have to make things up about Kirk. His skeletons rattle loud enough on their own." But Kirk wasn't taking chances. His legal team moved swiftly to identify the source and shut the story down before it gained traction. The attempt worked. Almost. The blogger deleted the post after receiving a stern legal threat, but not before screenshots had spread across Twitter and Facebook. Now, even without evidence, people were buzzing about what Kirk might be hiding. Privately, Rashida confronted Kirk about the rumor. "Is there any truth to it?" she demanded one night. Kirk sighed, rubbing his temples. "Babe, people will say anything when they're desperate. You know that." But the way he avoided her gaze told a different story. Jasmine, sensing weakness, leaned in harder. She began dropping cryptic posts on social media, photos of chess pieces, captions about patience and the right move at the right time. Each one fueled speculation. Each one chipped away at the image Kirk had worked so hard to control. Finally, she landed her boldest strike yet, a teaser clip from an upcoming podcast appearance. In it, she looked directly into the camera and said, "Let's just say, the truth about Kirk Frost isn't what you've been told, and I'm ready to talk." The clip went viral in hours. Kirk's phone lit up with calls from producers, friends, and even business partners asking what she meant. Rashida's patience wore thin. "We should have buried her when we had the chance," she told Kirk, her tone icy. The battle lines were redrawn, sharper and deeper than ever before. And this time, both sides were ready to play for keeps.